Thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. It's my first time in Japan, and I'm very exciting. And actually, I'm happy that Japan is hosting this kind of event. The topic is Japan choice in a turbulent world, and actually Japan choose to be involved in the Middle East. I know that Japan is investing a significant amount of money in the Palestinian Authority, on education, on people-to-people, on coexistence. And you know what? It's something to respect, because many countries choose to do nothing or to forget about our conflict. And I'm happy that Japan understands the importance of the conflict resolution between Israel and the Palestinians, because it's indeed a key conflict that can help to create a better future and to see the potential of what will be the days and the reality after this conflict will be solved. I came here all the way from the Knesset, from Jerusalem, to appreciate your effort and to let you know what we think. A lot of the Israelis, including us in the Labour Party in Israel, this is the party that established the state in Israel. Right now we are in the opposition, and we thought that after many people said that this conflict cannot be solved, we think that it is solvable. It actually must be solved, and we have to make a sincere effort in order to solve this long-lasting and very bloody conflict between us and the Palestinians. The diplomatic outline that I'm going to present you is a result of an effort of over 2 years that I made together with many good people from Israel, from the Palestinian Authority, from around the world, from Arab countries. I made this effort as the chairman of the Two-State Solution Caucus in the Knesset, which is one of the biggest caucus in the Knesset. And actually, you should know that there is a very fair majority of Israelis and Palestinians that still believe that a two-state solution is the only possible solution. I met with President Abbas many times. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on one thing, and this is that this conflict shouldn't be just managed. It should be solved, and this is why people elect us to be leaders. So I will start with a list of few working assumptions that we think are the working assumptions when we are tackling this conflict. One, as I mentioned, that the conflict management policy or theory is actually an abject failure. We don't believe that we should manage conflict. Conflict is not something to manage. And by the way, if anyone should manage a conflict, you know, this is the police, the border police, the IDF, the Palestinian forces. We as politicians, as elected officials, shouldn't give hand to the conflict management, because conflict made to be solved. And we saw before that when Israel and their partners in the other side made a genuine effort, we solved conflict even with much bigger and bitter enemies than the Palestinians, like with Egypt, which was maybe the biggest enemy of Israel in the history, and with Jordan. But it took leadership to decide that we are not continue to managing this conflict forever. Now, if managing the conflict means to spill blood from both sides of the conflict, to bear thousands of missiles on the south of Israel almost every summer, to destroy Gaza almost every summer, if this is a good management of conflict, we would manage the conflict. But this is not a way to manage a conflict, because the management of the conflict means a lot of suffer for both sides and a very bad future for both of us. So the first working assumptions is that we want to solve the conflict and that the conflict is solvable, and we don't want to continue to manage the conflict as many people in Israel and in the Palestinian Authority suggests. B, the second assumption is that the two-state solution, the two states for two people, is the only possible solution for this conflict. People will tell you on both sides that maybe we can agree on one-state solution, that maybe we can agree on three-state solution to give Gaza to be an independent state. Everyone who is telling you that is either lying to you or wants you to believing it, because it will not be solved under one-state solution, not over the dead body of the Israelis or the Palestinians. The one-state solution is killing the Palestinian aspiration for a state of their own, and it also kills the Zionist idea, the Zionist dream that makes us have a Jewish majority in the states of Israel. And this is why the two-state solution is the only possible solution, and this is why every effort that we are making toward resolving this conflict should aim to the two-state solution. The third assumption, working assumption, is that the no-partner approach is not an approach, it's a very defeatist attitude. What do we mean by no partner? By the way, both in the Palestinian side and in the Israeli side, people will tell you, we cannot solve the conflict because we don't have partner. Now, what do you mean? I mean, in war and in conflict, there will never be a perfect partner. I searched really hard. I met with many Palestinians, and I searched for a Palestinian president that will be a great Zionist and will adore Israel and will have the picture of Ben-Gurion in his office. I didn't find one. And I'm pretty much sure that we will not find an Israeli prime minister who put, I don't know, Yasser Arafat picture on his office. We don't adore each other. We don't have to, at the beginning to love each other. We're enemies. We're still enemies. And we will never find a perfect partner for peace. By the way, Egypt wasn't a perfect partner for peace. And Jordan wasn't a perfect partner for peace. Again, they were much bigger and bitter enemies than the Palestinians. But we made peace with them, which means that both sides can make steps in order to create a better partner in the other side, to make the other side stronger in his belief and faith in the solution for peace. When we are looking at partners in the other side, I at least, or the Labour Party in Israel, we split our enemies, our counterparts, our adversaries, to two main parts. Okay? We split them to those who want to live here next to us and those who want to live here instead of us. This is a very strict division. Now, with those who want to live here instead of us, which means kill us and live here instead of the Israelis, we don't have any other choice, any other language to speak with them, but the language of the IDF and the brave soldiers of the IDF, because again, if you come to kill me, I will try to kill you first. This is a very ancient biblical principle. But we do have an obligation, a very strong obligation, to try and make any effort in order to find the golden path for peace with those who at least says that they want to live here next to us. And I know a lot of Palestinians, by the way, including President Abbas, which again is not a perfect partner, but I do believe that the majority of the Palestinians want normal life and understand that Israel is here to stay and we're not going to disappear and want to live here next to us. And this is why I don't believe that the Israelis and the Palestinians today are making the necessary genuine attempt in order to solve this peace. Now, by the way, when I split our enemies to those who want to live here next to us and instead of us, when I'm saying instead of us, I mean also instead of you. Because a lot of the Arab world, a lot of, I don't want to say the Muslim world, but a lot of the Arab world are wants to have peace with us, but part of it don't want to have any kind of life that is a joint life and share life with you and us, that don't believe in our free liberal way to live, each one in his religious and belief. And when they, Daesh, ISIS, all this brutal, barbaric terror organization want to live here instead of us, I mean also instead of us in Israel, instead of the US, instead of Europe, instead of Japan, and instead actually everyone that is not exactly believing their dark and barbaric way of living. And this is why I also think, and this is not concerning only to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that we should create a united front. Israel, the Western world, Europe, the US, Japan, everyone who believe in a free life in the world, we should create a united front, a very strong united front against these barbaric forces, but this is for another lecture. The fourth working assumptions, and actually it's a very, very sad one, is that I believe that the Israeli-Palestinian future agreement is not only possible, but most of its parameters are known. We know more or less where will be the future borders between us and the Palestinian, in the future Palestinian state. We know what will be more or less the land swaps between us and the Palestinians. We have creative solutions for Jerusalem. We can talk about it later. We know that there won't be a flood of refugees, Palestinian refugees, to the states of Israel, but that the most of the solution for the refugees will be in the Palestinian state or in the hosting countries. So what's said is that most of the final parameters of the future Israeli-Palestinian agreement are knowns, and still, if 90% of them are knowns, we cannot make the fine-tuning to the 5 or 10 last % of disagreements. And this is why we need a courageous leadership between us and the Palestinians, because endless amount of papers and outlines and accords were written between us and the Palestinians. Israeli papers, Palestinian one, Americans one, European one, that said, and by the way, both sides agreed to most of the parameters, that said how we should solve the conflict in the future. But again, we don't find right now the leadership to make it. And the last working assumptions is that after the establishment of a Palestinian state, Israel will have a defensible borders. A lot of people will say, you know, we will have a Palestinian state and then we will have another Gazastan in the West Bank. By the way, it's a real fear, because the West Bank is not at the southern tail of Israel in the south. It's in the heart of Israel, Judah and Samaria. Okay? But courageous people understand that Israel, which have one of the strongest armies in the world, next to a demilitarized, and it's agreed upon with the Palestinians that the future Palestinian state will be demilitarized. Next to a demilitarized state, Palestinian state will make sure that Israel will be safe. Okay? Now, of course, there will be cases of terror, but we already have terror from the Palestinian territory. But after the Palestinians will have a state, the motivation, the justification, not that we can ever justify terror, but the motivation, the justification will be lower, maybe to zero. And the Palestinians will have a state. They will be responsible internationally. They will be obliged to the international law. And then I expect that there will be a huge reduction in the level of terror until a point that we will be learn to live together. And these fears, by the way, was when we gave Sinai to Egypt and when we had agreement with Jordan. And you know what? For more than 3 decades, we have a perfect peace with Egypt, almost perfect. Not everyone in Egypt loves Israel, not everyone in Israel loves Egypt, but this is a respectable peace, and this is exactly what we expect that will happen with the Palestinians. And I do believe, by the way, that after some years of education for peace between us and the Palestinians, we also be able to actually live together and even, God forbid, like the other side and understand that he's a human being exactly like you. Now, I will move from the working assumptions to some of the lessons from the failures of negotiation so far. And I will mention 3 main things as lessons. 1, we have to generate a positive momentum during the negotiation toward an agreement and before we have a final status agreement. Why? Because right now, what happens is that we're moving between 2 extremes, between having a very hard negotiation that most of the time fails, to nothing, to a total freeze, to a huge vacuum. But in this vacuum, in this freeze, it's not that nothing happened. We are going backward. The hatred, the demonization, become bigger. The terror and the Israeli military operations become bigger. There are sometimes more settlements built. So we have to make sure that we are generating a positive momentum and having some steps toward an agreement between negotiations, because we cannot always finish a deal in one round of negotiation. What we can do to generate positive momentum between negotiations or until we have final status agreement? For example, to implement existing commitments that will shape a two-states reality on the ground. We have still open commitments that were signed between us and the Palestinians that we didn't commit. For example, to move some of the territory of the sea area to be territory that is fully occupied by a Palestinian population, that we don't need it in Israel, not security-wise and definitely not demographic. We can move it to the A and B territories. For example, a very important step is the first Israeli official response to the Arab Peace Initiative. For almost 14 years, there is an Arab Peace Initiative offered to Israel. I'm not saying that it's a perfect initiative. By the way, I wouldn't sign it as it is. It's talking about the Golan Heights and other things in Jerusalem that we cannot agree. But Israel never respond to the Arab Peace Initiative that was offered to us by 22 Arab states and 57 Muslim states. Now, not only that it's not polite not to reply, but it's not even smart. Why? Because Israel will need some of those Arab states in order to reach a real agreement with the Palestinians, because any Palestinian that is here will tell you that no Palestinian president will be able to have serious concessions that they will have to make on refugees, on some of the places on Jerusalem, if you don't have the back support of Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and other states in the Arab world that will tell him, this is okay, you can do it. We are backing you up. And this is why I asked our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to consider and reply for the first time to respond to the Arab Peace Initiative. Between negotiations and toward the final status agreement, we can make things in Gaza and in East Jerusalem. Right now, the situation in East Jerusalem and in Gaza definitely is horrible. Can we do something in order to improve the life in Jerusalem between Jews and Arabs? Can we move some of the Arab Palestinian neighborhoods, some of them, already right now to the Palestinian Authority in order for them to be part of the future capital of the Palestinians of Jerusalem? Neighborhoods like Kafar Akeb, Shuafat, Isawiya, Azariya, Abu Dis are neighborhoods that I, as a Jewish, proud Jewish and Zionist, have no connection to them at all. I don't pray to them. They are not holy to me. Their land, they are surrounding East Jerusalem. They are populated by hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that I don't want in my states and don't want them to be part of my demography. Can I move them already, right now, for example, to the Palestinian state to create a kind of a Palestinian capital, a beginning at least of a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem? Yes, we can. This is one step that we can do in Jerusalem. Can we work better in Jerusalem on coexistence between Jewish kids and Arab kids who live together in Jerusalem? Can we make more projects of people to people? Can we education for peace between Israelis, Jews, Arabs, and Muslims and Christians actually also in Jerusalem? Yes, we don't do it enough. This is another step that we can do before we are reaching a final status agreement and end of all claim agreement as we want and aspire to reach. In Gaza, can we do steps that will make the life of the Gazan people better? Gaza is on the edge of catastrophe, okay? It's on the edge already of a huge humanitarian crisis. Can Israel and the international community can make something about the water crisis in Gaza? Yes. About the electricity that is provided to the Gazan people only for 7 or 8 hours a day? Yes. Can we in the international community do something about the beginning, at least, of the demilitarization of Gaza? Yes. Can we build a seaport that will be able to enter products to Gaza? Yes. And we can do it while we secure Israel, because, of course, we have to inspect that the Hamas government, who are a terrorist government, will not use these products and materials in order to self-create missiles, but we can do it. Israel is the only country that really knows how to do it. But in the meanwhile, the life of the Gazan people will be better. So these kind of steps in East Jerusalem, in Gaza, will be steps that we can do before we are reaching a final status agreement. And Israel's response to the Arab League initiative, Arab Peace Initiative, will be a step that shows that Israel wants the Arab world to be part of the solution. This is something we can do even before, and of course implementing existing commitments. Now, another lesson from the failure of negotiation thus far is that we didn't include, I gave a hint about it, but we didn't include regional stakeholders. And again, I'm saying I think that Israel should approach some of the moderate Arab world that wants to be part of the solution between us and the Palestinians and ask it to be on board, not instead of America, not instead of the Europeans or the Japanese, but in parallel to them. Because if anyone can help us reach an agreement with the Palestinians more than anyone else, it's the moderate Arab world. And I visited in Morocco and in other places that I cannot say I visited, and I heard them, and trust me, they understand the danger. And you know what? In many cases, they even see Israel as a future partner for them on immediate threats that they are having. They understand that sometimes the enemy of your enemy can be your friend or maybe your partner, and they understand that Israel is not the biggest devil as they were educated their entire life, and that Israel belongs to those who want to live together and more peacefully in the neighborhood against other Muslims and Arabs that want to kill them. You know, the Daesh and ISIS and all these crazy barbaric terror organizations, 95% of their victims are Arabs and Muslims, not Jews and not Christians. And they understand that Israel can be partner on it. Another lesson, and this is a very painful lesson, is that we have to deal during a negotiation with both tangible and intangible issues. What do I mean? We have tangible issues like borders, like water, like security. These things that you can touch, they are tangible. And then we have things that are intangible, like recognition. To the Israelis, it's very important to be recognized as that Israel will be recognized as the nation state of the Jewish people. For the Palestinians, it's important to be recognized as first as a people. There is a lot of Israelis that don't believe that there is a Palestinian people, that there is a Palestinian nation. It's important also for them. But what is happening is that until Netanyahu, when we had a negotiation, we dealt mainly with the tangible issues. Okay, with Olmert, with Barak, borders, water, security, fences. And during Netanyahu's time, most of the focus is on the non-tangible. First recognize us before we are even starting to speak. And I think, and it's always fall on this or that. And I think that a serious negotiation between the two sides should mix and deal and tackle both the tangible and the non-tangible issues. I guess I don't have a lot of time. Mr. Walsh, how much time I have? 5 more minutes. So in the 5 minutes I will, well, it's a 27 pages outline, and I'll be happy to, no, not what I meant to speak, but I'll be happy to send it to each and one of you that will speak. But I will touch maybe 3 more principles of my outline. Again, I talked about it, mutual recognition of 2 nation states. I want Israel to be the nation state of the Jewish people, and I want the Palestinians to be the nation state of the Palestinian people. However, my outline is the first outline that at least formally suggests that these two nation states will be prosperous, will have prosperous and successful minorities in both states, which mean, you know that Israel have almost 20% of Arab Israeli or Palestinian Israeli minority that live 99% of the time peacefully in Israel. Israeli Arabs, Israeli Palestinians are at the highest positions in Israel politics and medical life and innovations and whatever. We have members of parliaments that are Israeli Palestinians. We have judges. We have a high-ranking officer in the police, not in the army, because they are not. Most of them are not serving in the army. But I'm from those who believe that also the future Palestinian state should have a Jewish minority. If we have Jewish minority in England and in the U.S. and maybe in Japan, I don't know, Ambassador, we have? We don't. Yes. Yeah, we don't have any reason that in our most immediate and close partner state, future state, that this state will be, you know, free of Jewish community. Jewish communities are mixed very good in every country around the world, and I think that part of the solution can be to offer some of the settlers that lives today in Israel to stay there. If it's more important to you to stay and live on what they and also I see as our father's land, and Judah and Samaria is the cradle of Jewish civilization, okay? If it's more important to you to live in our father's land than to live in the sovereign state of Israel, stay and live there. By the way, we will have to provide you with security in the agreement. We will not neglect you to your destiny, and this all can be inside an agreement. But I think that the future Jewish community inside the Palestinian state can be a very good idea. Because, again, there is no reason that we will have a Palestinian minority and they won't, and then it will take a lot of the reasons that people object the agreement, because a lot of people say, yeah, you know, we will have to tear apart so many people from their homes. Most of the settlers will be, their houses will be land swap with the Palestinians, but a minority of them should be offered either to come back to the newly bordered Israel or to stay as a citizen or a resident of the future Palestinian state. The second, another principle is a mutual privilege access for worship and travel. I want every Palestinian to have a better and a special privilege access to the holy places that is under the Israeli sovereignty after an agreement, even a better access than a Japanese or an American will come, because we will understand that as we have in the future Palestinian state places that are holy to us, okay, like the tomb of Abraham, our father, and other places in Hebron, for example, like I want to have a privileged access to those places in the future Palestinian state. I want them to feel free and come to Israel to worship or to travel or just to relax in the Dead Sea. And I don't want any Palestinian and any Israeli to think that after an agreement we have a very tall walls and we will never see the places in the other side. And this is why a future agreement should create, under an agreement, a mutual privilege access for worship and travel. Not less important, and it will be maybe the last point, is the mutual privilege access for business, economic, and academia. Because I truly think that Israel can help the future Palestinian state in those areas of innovation, technology, high-tech, medicine, academy, and of course we can learn a lot from the Palestinians. And our aim is to have a strong Palestinian state. I want the Palestinian state economy to be strong, because a strong, economically strong Palestine will be a Palestine with less motivation to terror, with less poverty. And this is why a strong, economically strong Palestine is an Israeli interest. And I demanded to include in the future agreement also a mutual privilege access for business, economic, and academia in a way that will give a Palestinian citizen a priority to Israeli academic world and high-tech and industry and medicine and God knows how much potential we have in helping the future Palestinian state to be a strong one. I will put an end here and will tell you, and of course, if anyone will have questions in the future or even after the session, I'll be more than happy to answer, that will tell you that again, I believe that 90% of the future agreement is written. We really have to make an effort to make the fine-tuning on the disagreements that we have. In order to do it, we have to have a strong leadership, a very dedicated leadership that will decide that they end the conflict. And when the Israelis and Egyptian and Jordanian leaders decided that they are ending the conflict, they ended the conflict. We just saw Colombia ending a conflict just in the last few weeks after 52 years of terror and conflict. So the last sentence will be that I believe that not only that, you know, peace is not a privilege. Peace is not luxury. We have a saying in Israel that we are waiting for peace. We're always praying and waiting for peace, but we shouldn't wait for peace. We should bring peace. This is why they chose us as leader. Peace is not a privilege. We owe it. It's an obligation. It's a debt, not only to ourselves, but mainly to the future generation. Peace is doable. Peace is possible. It is in our hand, and now it's only the time for you and us to do everything in order to bring it. Arigato. Thank you very much.